capitulation agreement with Hamas, which served some purpose for Israel in, of course, getting some hostages released, and served much purpose for Hamas in giving them time to rearm, regroup, rearrange for the next rounds. It is now officially over, and unlike past ceasefires, it is over because Israel ended it. Israel went on the attack, killed some senior officials in Hamas in Gaza, as well as some other people. According to the Hamas numbers, it's over 300, so we can assume it's probably at least in the dozens. We have no idea of knowing what the actual numbers are, but it's always interesting to look at Hamas numbers. By the way, this time they actually rose. I was following the news as it was happening. They rose over time. It didn't start at 500 as it did in the past. But yeah, a lot of interesting aspects to this. Again, Israel doing something it doesn't usually do. Usually, it lets Hamas violate the ceasefire so that it can tell the international community, look, we're just fighting back. And of course, the international community says, no, you can't. That's one thing. Another thing is last year, Israel seemingly intentionally avoided fighting during Ramadan. And this year, it looks like Israel might be taking advantage of it, which is the right thing to do. So a few new things here. Again, not what we would advocate for on this channel. And like always, I think this is like every IDF operation, this one can be named Operation, at least we're doing something. That's not the name, but that would be a more accurate name. Anyway, so there's a lot to talk about in the last hour. A Houthi missile fired at Beersheba in Israel was shot down outside of Israel before it got to Israeli airspace. But that's another very interesting aspect to what's happening here. Of course, Donald Trump's rhetoric here is something that's going to come up, and we're going to see if he is going to back it up, unlike his predecessors. Welcome to the Daily Objective. Daniel, your thoughts on the recent developments in the war?
Yeah, I mean, I would only add on the sort of the Houthi rocket. There was another one that was that the Houthi said supposedly hit American ship, which the American ship responded with it wasn't even close. It was like hundreds of meters basically away, which sort of reminds me of the great event that should always be remembered from when the war or the escalation of the Russian invasion of all of Ukraine has started, and when one Russian warship has also been threatening to some Ukrainians or something, and they responded with Russian warship, fuck off. Which is the only sort of response you should ever have to any sort of terrorist regimes. Now, when it comes to the death toll, I saw over 400. I saw over 300, so I'm not sure. But I'm really want to thank the dedication and the lengths Hamas goes to basically get us the numbers while the bombings are happening to sort of like really, they are really on top of this. You mentioned the sort of like fighting during Ramadan, and yeah, that's absolutely the case. I mean, if you people remember from last year, that was used as a justification not to go into Rafah. There were talks about, well, we'll do it. Well, at first, I think there was like threatening, like if by Ramadan something doesn't happen, we'll invade Rafah, and then they didn't invade Rafah. Uh, and then the sort of the reporting that is done on this, the idea that Israel is breaking the ceasefire, I think it should be looked at similarly if United States ever sort of declares war on Iran. It shouldn't be said that America declared war on Iran. America just acknowledged that it has been at war with Iran for decades now. And in the similar way, this is not Israel breaking the ceasefire. This is Israel recognizing that the ceasefire is not in effect and has never really been. Hamas has been violating it throughout all of it. No hostages are being released right now. There are no negotiations happening. Hamas has been shutting down every single proposal there was. This is simply a recognition of Israel that, oh yeah, there is actually no ceasefire and we have no obligation, which I don't think they should have had anyway, sort of obligation to uphold the ceasefire. But yeah, this is absolutely this is great to see. And yeah, I hope this will not be short-lived. There's a few more things to say on this. But yeah, someone says welcome back, Razi, and I'd like to join with that.
Thanks. I was here like 3 days ago, wasn't I? Wasn't I on a show 3 days ago? But anyway, yeah, I haven't been on as much. I guess maybe with the war being back, I will also be back. But yeah, like you said. I mean, there was a deal. We, of course, on this channel opposed that deal, but there's a deal. Each side gets something, and what Israel was getting was over. Like you said, the hostages are back, and the hostages that were a part of that phase are back, and that's it. And since then, Israel's been getting nothing, and Hamas has been getting away with it. And that's the story of Hamas. Hamas's entire existence is getting away with it. So that's why I say, this is Operation Better Than Nothing, or whatever you want to call it, because again, they all deserve to die. Certainly, all of Hamas, and I don't have much sympathy for so-called civilians in Gaza. Uh, so, if at least some of them die, that's a step in the right direction. Those people will not participate in the next October 7th. That's a step forward. A nicer step forward would be to make sure there is no October 7th again. I want to go back to this Yemen shooting because it's interesting because it's the timing of it is again something that Israel really should use to its advantage if it knows how, and the timing of it is again a test for Trump. Trump has been taking some action against the Houthis. Certainly, we haven't seen anything like that from Biden. I think it's a bit more than we've seen from Israel in some of its retaliatory strikes in Yemen. But the Houthis have made a point that they're gonna, fight alongside their Palestinian brothers. So once fighting is resumed, they have to rejoin it, and they did with this missile that they fired. And so this is an interesting moment to see if Israel is gonna do something on its own in Yemen, to see if the U.S. will step it up, and especially to see with Trump's recent statements that anything the Houthis fire now is going to be considered as if Iran shot it. So the next logical step is you retaliate against the people who you hold responsible, and that is Iran. So I think the US and Israel are really running out of excuses for not attacking Iran, and I hope those excuses have run out. I mean, yeah, hopefully somebody is telling Trump, look, the rhetoric is good, it gets headlines and all that stuff. I don't think it always is, usually isn't. But yeah, maybe actually back it up because you will be judged on that, and that will be part of your legacy.
Yeah, and when it comes to Iran, there is something interesting that's going on, and I'm wondering if the foreign powers are trying to sort of find out what are the principles of Trump or how he is sort of acting, because he actually did put out originally saying to Iran that I want to make a deal. If we do not make a deal, then I'll something bad will happen for you, something among those lines. And Iran has been not really receptive to that, which doesn't really make sense because Trump is really seeming like he would go stronger. And the only way I can sort of like justify it if they believe that, sort of basically that Trump will only ally himself with actual dictators. So you need to sort of stand up to him and need to say that you don't want any deal, sort of what Putin is doing and has been getting away with. But yeah, it's almost I don't know, like anomaly the way Trump has been acting with Israel if you compare it to any other ally America has and the way he has been acting. So yeah, like you mentioned, the bombing of the Houthis, this attack itself apparently was cooperated, or rather than cooperated, the Trump administration did know that Israel was going to do this. So we at least know these channels are sort of restored, or they sort of work, which they didn't fully during the Biden administration, where Israel hasn't been saying what it's going to do to the United States, basically because they would most likely try to stop it, similar to the Rafah offensive that the Biden administration was against, similar to how they came out against the pager attack which they didn't know about, but they were against it after it happened, which showed you that pretty much if Israel did try to talk to America about this, it most likely would not happen. So yeah, I definitely want to see more. The only thing I'm hoping for is originally the title was Israel resumes the war in Gaza question mark, because something I'm worried about is if this really is just sort of basically some kind of pressure to want to get more out of Hamas. But at least right now, as it is, we are sort of acting from limited information. We don't know what Trump and Netanyahu are thinking. But from what we see so far, this is great to see, and this needs to both continue and should have happened at the start. Now, something that fills me with a bit more hope is the fact that this is not that big of a surprise, because about a week ago we had the stopping of aid going in, then we had some stopping with electricity from going in. So this has been sort of ramping up, which fills me with a bit more hope that this has been sort of in the plan or in the making, or there is possibly some uh, basically hoping to do something more out of this.
Yeah, and part of this is that historically it is Hamas that resumes the fighting, and Hamas prepares for whatever Israel's response is going to be. So the people Israel took out last night, they couldn't have taken out if Hamas had fired their first shot, because they had already been in the tunnels or wherever by the time that first shot is fired. So this was a wise move, which again Israel can make, as we've seen, but often doesn't because its so-called allies don't want it to. And yeah, the point about Trump's approach to Israel being an anomaly. Yeah, I mean Trump, is an enemy to America's allies and an ally to America's enemies, and Israel is the exception to that. And it, there's no guarantee that it will remain the exception to that. So yeah, we've been saying this from the start. Yeah, you can't implement Trump's plan in 4 years and so on. Just get on with it. You can't um, really destroy all of Gaza. At some point, Trump will say, "No, that's not what I meant by hell to pay." Okay, get on with it. And then when he says that's not what I meant, deal with it then. So I know this is, Israel has told some people in Gaza to move from one place to another, and they're complaining, of course. But this is very much, there's still a risk that this is a little bit of an attack to tell Hamas, look, the time has come to make a deal, to make a second phase of the deal, to make sure that the hostages are back. And of course, any deal where all the hostages are back, Israel commits to ending the war completely. Again, you can commit to that and not follow through, but I don't think it'll do that. Thank you, Bonnie, for the super chat. Somebody in the chat asks, what is the objective to be reached? Peace. That is the objective. The objective is that Israel can live in peace. Israelis can live their lives as they want. It would be great if everybody in the Middle East went in that direction, and I think they start, as the saying goes, loving their life more than they want to kill us. Then that is possible. But yeah, the objective should be for Israel to live in peace.
Yeah, I mean, and this is sort of pretty simple. People say that Israeli-Palestinian conflict is like so complex and so, multifaceted, and nobody has the solution. But the solution is pretty easy. Just Israel has to do what is necessary and what needs to happen when something like October 7, and even before that happens. When you have a terrorist organization on your border attacking you, kidnapping your citizens, generally, and professing that their goal is the destruction of all of your society, of all of your nation, and that is same with Hezbollah, is same with the Houthis. They have it on their banner, death to Israel. I don't think you can get much more sort of nuanced after that. The whole reason why Hezbollah exists is to get rid of Israel from the face of the Middle East, at the very least, for the start for them. And also Iran is, maybe it's not their sole purpose to just destroy Israel, but it's definitely one of their sort of goals. So yeah, that's pretty simple. Once you have that, you need to do something about it, and that has to be enforced. And the fact that Israel hasn't been doing that and has been compromising for decades about what is the proper solution to the to this to this conflict is problematic. And now we are seeing a bit more now. Let's see where it goes. Generally, I have been pretty pessimistic for the last few, pretty much since the ceasefire started. So for the few months that basically once a ceasefire starts, there is already um, you are already, I think, sort of giving up. You are already sort of saying, well, let's cut our losses, let's get some of the hostages back, and let's hope the next time Hamas tries to kill us or any other Palestinian group tries to kill us, they will not be as successful and will be able to continue through that. But um, there's never any willingness to actually, yeah, finish this, you know, solve the Middle East.
You mentioned Hezbollah. It's interesting to see Hezbollah's response to this, which was some condemnation statement that could have been written by any European Union official, and nothing about getting involved in the fighting. Now, on October 7th, when Israel was at its weakest, Hezbollah didn't join in the way that they had initially planned, but they did start bombing Israel daily on the 8th of October and did so until Israel replied with overwhelming military force and pretty much decimated Hezbollah. Hezbollah can't join the fighting now, not because of some deal that was signed by somebody, but because they have been destroyed. Not destroyed enough, but destroyed to a large extent. Yeah, that should be some sort of a lesson that if you destroy your enemy, they cannot keep killing you. And maybe apply that lesson. Maybe it will apply in other places like Gaza and Tehran. Um, so the person in the chat says, Razi, hate will never bring peace. Yes, I want to defeat the people who are motivated by hate. Yeah, there is no, somebody else also said no peace until Israel has dominated the land. Look, it's not about the land, although I agree that Israel, that land should be a part of the state of Israel. Um, but that's not what it's about. It's about the fact that there are savages who only want to kill all the Jews. And when that is no longer a possibility for them, and they see that if they pursue this goal, life will be much more miserable than if they don't. Yeah, then perhaps. Yeah. By the way, people, I think, misunderstand my point when I say peace. I don't mean peace in the way that the left means it. Like, let's go to the table, let's each compromise and let's sign a deal. I mean peace as in you're no longer in a state of war. That is achieved by victory. That's what I mean by peace.
Yeah, I'm just on the main the X page on United Nations, and they have a pinned comment saying we need peace. I don't think they mean it in the same way you do. And yeah, you see pretty much the standard sort of trying to condemn all this. Now someone talking about the peace again, or sort of that the hate will not bring us peace. Again, peaceful nations do not go to war with each other. Peaceful and reasonable and civilized nations do not start war against each other. It's always at least one of them is authoritarian or totalitarian, or some form of collectivism, some form of tribalism that needs an external enemy that it tries to destroy. And this is what has happened on October 7 and before. Basically, it was on October 7, it was sort of brought into a new level, but nothing has fundamentally changed. The Palestinian society is set upon destroying Israel, and no amount of again, that's the sort of reasoning similar to like international law or these international organization. That sort of war is just another sort of way with dealing with each other. That basically, we disagree with things, so we go to war. Because we cannot do anything else. No, once you go to war, it's already a denial that no reasonable solution is possible. That you do not want to deal with them peacefully. That you do not want to deal by reason, and you want to enforce your opinions on them. You want to enforce your ideology on the other society. And this is what Hamas is doing. And the only way to respond is in kind, is to respond in force. You cannot try to deal with force by reason. You have to put it down. You have to. It's like fire going crazy. You have to extinguish it. There is no other way. There is no sort of talking you can do. Talking could have been done before. There is no talking you can do after nations go to war. So the only solution is what we did in World War II, is a complete annihilation and submission of the other side, and letting them know that this is not an okay way to deal with. There are tens of thousands of deaths that came out from this war. It's all on Hamas, and Hamas needs to pay for that, and Palestinian society that allowed that to happen needs to pay for that. There is no other sort of solution you can come up with. That once, yeah, to really make the point, once Palestinians decide they want to deal by force, you cannot go back.
Um, Ziv says, or they will change their ways, but it's extremely unlikely, unfortunately. Yeah, it is unlikely, but it's also unlikely in part because of us. And if we change our approach to things, for example, one of the people killed in Israel's airstrikes today was, um, I read a bit of the profile on Israeli media. He's some sort of role that's equivalent to prime minister in the Gaza Strip. And he's also, was it head of the teachers union in UNRWA or something like that? And this is us. We're funding Hamas this way. UNRWA is paid by us. The people who run it are Hamas. And then what do you expect? I mean, children are all innocent. Everybody is born a blank slate, whether they're born in Gaza or in Tel Aviv or in Tehran or in America. And yeah, if they're indoctrinated to be terrorists from the age of zero, that doesn't mean that 100% chance that they will become a terrorist, but it's a pretty high chance. And if you don't indoctrinate them in terrorism and actually bring them up as human beings, then there is some hope. So look, denazification worked. I think it would take a lot longer in Gaza. I wouldn't necessarily do it. I'd rather Israel bombard the place into oblivion. Anybody who's left gets kicked out. But yeah, it's not impossible. Um, yeah.
Yeah, and sort of my act of benevolence or optimism that I adopted after the killing of Hassan Nasrallah was the idea that I'm not going to learn the names of their replacements, because hopefully I won't have to sort of even know it for long. And that has worked in case of Hezbollah pretty well, since I think we are on like the fourth leader after Hassan Nasrallah, or I think third or something. I don't know. And in a similar way, basically after Yahya Sinwar was killed, he was the sort of the head of the political bureau of Hamas. Now that was replaced by sort of a 5-member committee, and I've seen differing things, but I think 2 of them have been killed during this strike. So again, I'm not gonna bother with learning their names. Although one of them is the sort of like an old guy, or whatever you want to call him. I cannot remember his name either, but he has been. I think he has been the head of Hamas in the past. Uh, yeah, but yeah, what else is there to say on this? This is great to see. Israel needs to continue. We need to see more of this, and we cannot go back to peace, the so-called peace dealings with Hamas, which is akin to surrender. So I hope really this is not just some, yeah, just some, quick things that we just want to get a better deal, or we want to get more hostages out. Again, there's about 50 hostages left in Gaza. Most of them are confirmed dead. So even when we are talking about the release, for the most part, it will be just negotiating for human bodies or for dead bodies, and there's about 2,000 of living hostages, at most 2,000 living hostages. We do not have a confirmation that they are alive, because Hamas never allows a Red Cross or any international organization to go into them. So we do not know.
Yeah, and of course we know from some of the hostages who haven't been released that it's taken out on them. So they're tortured worse when there's more attacks by Israel and so on, which of course is something that very much helps the people who uh, demand that Israel capitulate to Hamas. But yeah, look, this should have been done on October 7th, and yeah, and it's still not being done. So whatever is being done, let's celebrate it and hope for more. Yeah, Hezbollah leaders, one of the great things about having many of them and killing them one by one is there's more chance of uh, people on work visas or student visas in the US coming to funerals in Lebanon of terrorists and then getting deported, which is going to be the topic of the reality show today. Yes, a professor in Brown University was deported in part because she went to Beirut for Nasrallah's funeral, which she said she went to for religious reasons. What that means, I don't know. We'll find out. Thank you, Akira, for the super chat. Akira says, denazification in Gaza. What about Ukraine? Joke.
Well, no joke. Ukraine does need to be denazified. They need to go back to Russia.
Yeah. Um, Thank you, Christian, for the super chat. Christian says, peace through victory. Unfortunately, in Jewish Zionist groups, they discuss as much about pro-contra Bibi, Qatargate, Shabak, etc., than winning the actual war, or is my impression wrong? It's not wrong in terms of what the public discourse is like in Israel. So I was watching the news from Israeli channels, and there's the one right-wing religious channel that celebrated today, and the others, this was like, Israel had just been attacked. It was like mourning on those news networks because supposedly this is bad for the hostages. What's good for the hostages is Israel completely capitulating and, of course, ensuring future hostage situations, according to the mainstream media. So yeah, I think Israel's public discourse is the public discourse of a society that doesn't realize what situation it's in, even after October 7th. I've always thought that about Israel, by the way. That's always been public discourse in Israel has been seemingly unaware, and in a sense there are good aspects of the fact that you're not constantly obsessed with the fact that you're surrounded by, hundreds of millions of savages who want to kill you, and some of whom want nothing more out of life. Uh, but on the other hand, that delusion has led to things like October 7th, and it will lead to them again if Israel doesn't realize it's at war, fight, win, and then there will be peace in that way. That is my optimistic message that I will wrap up with. Daniel, parting thoughts?
Gaza the land ist.
Let's hope maybe this time. Thanks everybody for watching. We will be back tomorrow with the Daily Objective, and the reality show follows with the pro-terrorist professor from Brown University who is no longer in the US and in a place probably much more suited to her values. Thanks, Daniel. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.